Hello everyone, my name is Rajat Srivastava and I'm a software engineer in the health intent space here at CERN. Hope you enjoy listening to my talk and welcome to DEF CON from Home 2020. If you haven't guessed already, my talk for today is about real-time stream processing. For the past 2 years, I've had the opportunity to work with multiple streaming systems using different kinds of technologies. Some are better than the others, but they all try to serve the same purpose. Today, we will learn about what is stream processing and compare it with some other ways of processing data other than using streams. We will also talk about the motivation behind stream processing and why it might be a better option. Then, we will discuss what we expect from a robust streaming system and what factors we should consider when comparing multiple streaming platforms. Finally, we will dive into a famous open source data streaming platform called Apache Flink, which some of you might already have heard of. With that being said, let's get started. So what is stream processing? Stream processing is a part of the big data technology that focuses on processing continuous streams of data in real time. What that means is that these systems run continuously and process data as it arrives. There is no limit of how much data can be generated and will have to be processed. So these systems have to be designed to work with an infinite set of data in mind. Let's visualize this with a real-world example. A quick example of a stream processing system is Twitter. Tweets are generated in real time by millions of people all around the world. These tweets, also known as events for the stream processing system, are then processed continuously to compute the hashtags of the trending topics. No matter how many tweets are generated, the system is expected to process all of them in real time and produce results almost instantaneously. So I mentioned that I will cover some other ways of processing data. Let's talk about those. There is the traditional batch processing system, where a finite set of data is processed all at once as a group. Say you want to water your backyard. Filling up a bucket of water and pouring on the garden is what a batch processing system would do. A stream processing system, however, is like a pipe with water always coming in from the faucet without stopping. The batch processing jobs are either run manually or they are scheduled to run at regular intervals. They work particularly better than streaming systems when a large data set is involved. A good example of where a batch system is used a lot is an ETL job, where ETL stands for extract transform load, where sometimes petabytes of data needs to be processed at once. Let's move on to another type of processing called micro batch processing. As the name suggests, a micro batch system generates a stream of very small micro batches of finite data and processes them continuously. This behavior looks identical to a streaming system, but is in fact similar to the batch system, where the primary difference is that the batches are smaller and they are processed more frequently. Micro batch processing could be useful in a scenario where a batch processing system is already used, but a lower response time is required. However, it cannot be as robust as an actual stream processing system because it creates a delay due to the size of the batch. Any incoming event will have to wait for the current batch to finish before it is processed. So it's not purely real time. Now that we have a basic understanding of what a stream processing system really is, let's talk about what motivates us to process data in real time. In today's date, data has become one of the biggest commodities, and time is considered more valuable than ever. Processing and delivering data in real time has become more important than ever. In fact, in most cases, the value of individual data decreases with time. This trend is also called as the time value of data. Let's try to understand this with an example of a credit card fraud prevention system. Say your credit card details are stolen, and the card is being used to purchase a very expensive item online where you have never shopped before. The bank's system needs to process these details very quickly and detect it as a fraud immediately within seconds to be able to decline this transaction. A robust stream processing system will come handy in such a situation. A lot of other examples and applications of real-time stream processing lie in the world of IoT, from getting alerts on system malfunctions in factories to reporting real-time traffic data on maps using GPS. All these applications require a robust stream processing system for efficient and effective data processing. Now that we have touched bases on what motivates us to use stream processing, let's get a little nerdy and discuss some of the details of what we look for in a good streaming system. So we have established so far that we could really use a robust streaming system. But how do we compare which one is better or worse? Let's talk about some of the factors we should keep in mind. Low latency. Latency is the measure of how late the data is, or the delay measured mostly in seconds or milliseconds. It's the measure of the time gap between when the event occurs and when it's done being processed. Most applications require sub-second latency, meaning that the data should be done processing within a second of when it's produced. High throughput. We want large amounts of data flowing through the streaming systems within a given time frame. Just like in the example of Twitter, since there are a million tweets flowing through the system, we want high throughput to be able to process those tweets within a short amount of time. Fault tolerance. A system should be able to recover from a failure and not lose data. Some systems provide an at least once guarantee, where it can be sure to process the data at least once in case there is a failure. Some other systems also provide exactly once guarantee, which is more robust and ensures that the data is processed with no duplicates in case there is a failure. Another important aspect of a good streaming system is event time processing. Before we learn what that means, we should discuss the difference between an event time and processing time. Event time refers to the time that the record, also known as event, was generated. This is typically the time when the event occurred. The information of the event time is typically embedded within the record itself before it enters the processing pipeline. Processing time, however, refers to the system time of the machine that is processing the event. So why is it important to know about the event time? Well, in an ideal world, the event time and processing time would be the same, where the event is processed as soon as it occurs. But there is usually a gap between those. In fact, the streaming systems need to handle the scenario where the data is out of order or arrives late into the processing pipeline. Let's think of this with an example. Imagine you are playing a team game in an offline mode on a flight. You're winning and acquiring points, but the points are not getting aggregated to the score of your team since you're offline. When the flight lands and the phone gets connected back to the network, the points flowing into the system for aggregation will be both the current events as well as the events which were generated hours ago in the offline mode. So even though the processing time for both of these events are the same, the event time for some of them is actually hours ago, and hence will need to be computed accordingly for correct aggregation. A robust streaming system needs to handle this situation very well, where the event time is very different from the processing time and the data is late or out of order. As promised, we will discuss about Apache Flink, which is one of the top names which come up in the data streaming world. Apache Flink is an open source platform which serves both stream and batch processing. It's focused on low latency and high throughput data processing. It started at Berlin Institute of Technology by a research group in 2009, and it was formerly known as Stratosphere. In 2014, Flink was accepted as an Apache top-level project and became open source. At its core, Flink's runtime is a streaming engine, but it has APIs for both stream processing, called DataStream API, and batch processing, called DataSet API, on top of it. In other words, it uses the same stream-based engine for both batch and stream processing. In fact, Flink considers batch as a subset of a stream which just has an end to it. Flink is a processing framework. It is not a full-fledged framework. An example of a full-fledged framework would be the Hadoop ecosystem. The Hadoop ecosystem has its own storage, Hadoop distributed file system. It has its own processing model, like MapReduce. Unlike Hadoop, Flink just has a processing model and doesn't need to worry about other abstractions like storage and can work with other storage models. This makes it very easy for developers to use Flink with their existing architecture and their existing storage models. Flink also has the ability to use event time to handle out-of-order events and late arrival events. Remember the person playing the game on the plane? Flink can handle that. All right, so we get that Flink is good. But what happens if there's a failure? Will I lose my data? Well, Flink offers a false tolerance mechanism to recover the state of the application when a failure occurs. This mechanism makes sure that records are not lost due to the failure and the application can start back up from where it left off. With compatible data sources, Flink offers an exactly once guarantee, which means that in case of a failure, Flink will restart without losing any data and without any duplicate data. To maintain this guarantee, the source of the data stream needs to have the ability to rewind and replay the records, which were previously read by the pipeline, to a defined resync point. Some of the data sources like Apache Kafka and AWS Kinesis streams are compatible for this mechanism. For some other sources like Google PubSub, which are not compatible, Flink offers an at least once guarantee, which means that there will be no data loss, but there might be duplicate records. So Flink's slogan actually says stateful computation over data streams. To understand the statement, we need to understand what we mean by stateful operators. Stateful operators store data across the processing of events. The state can be created and modified by user-designed operators like map, filter functions, etc., or system operators like the window buffer of an aggregated function. Here is an example of a stateless operator. There is an input data stream coming in, some code is being executed in the operator, and the results are emitted to the output. There is no storage here, there is no memory. Now, the same operator with an added state makes it a stateful operator. The operator is now able to store the state in a reliable storage, which can be used to recover from a failure. This is a very important part for Flink's failure recovery strategy. How do we store the state though? Well, we store it in a state backend. The storage itself can be configured in Flink. The default internal memory is used by default in the Java heap, or it can be configured to an external memory using RocksDB, which stores the state in a distributed file system location, making the storage more reliable. To understand the Flink's fault tolerance discussion more in depth, we need to talk about checkpoints, which are an essential part of Flink's fault tolerance mechanism. Flink's checkpoint mechanism is based on barriers. You can essentially view them as walls between streams of data which flows along with the data in order. These barriers separate the data into a current snapshot and a next snapshot, and this signals a start of a checkpoint. There can be multiple barriers in a stream of data. Consider an operator with a multiple input data streams and an output data stream. When the operator has received the barriers for a particular snapshot, say snapshot n, it writes out the state of the operator to the state backend and then emits the barrier for the snapshot n into the output stream. The operator needs to make sure that the barrier has been received from all the input streams before it emits the barrier to the output stream. Once the barrier has reached the end of the processing, which is the sync operator, it acknowledges that the checkpoint coordinator that this barrier has been received. If there are multiple sync operators, once all of those snapshots are acknowledged to the checkpoint coordinator, the snapshot is then considered complete. Now that we have the state stored in a safe place and the checkpoint completed, let's assume that a failure has occurred. For recovery from this failure, the last completed checkpoint is used and the system redeploys the whole workflow, providing every operator the state that was snapshotted as part of the previous checkpoint. The sources are then started again from the position of the above checkpoint. This mechanism makes Flink fault tolerant when exactly one's guarantee, given that the data sources are compatible enough to replay the events from the previous checkpoint and that the state is configured properly. That brings us to the end of our talk. We have come a long way in this riveting discussion about stream processing. I hope that you learned something new today and that I was convincing enough to make some of you research a little bit more about these topics in your own time. With that being said, have a great rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy DEF CON from Home 2020. Goodbye.